Vice Chancellor and my friend Professor Vasudha Kamath, Dr. P.N. Mandre, Dr. Sanjay Pawar, Dr. Milind Bitre, and my friends. It's indeed a great pleasure as well as an honor to be here this morning to celebrate 125th birth anniversary of Bharat Ratna, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. At the very outset, I must say that I was very pleased with the introduction that have been added to that. The total number of books is 37th. In fact, this morning my 37th book was released by the Honorable Chief Minister. This is a coffee table book on Dr. Ambedkar in Marathi, and that was released by the Honorable Chief Minister just 2 hours back. The total number of books is 37, research papers 300 plus, and the number of reports 27. You said 27, it's actually 31. For the country as a whole, for the state of Maharashtra, including the farmer suicide famous report. So I have been around and I have been trying to do some work. People ask me, what do you do in your spare time? I'm a crazy person and I keep working all the time. But I'm very happy to be here. I came to Mumbai another day when I was talking to Vasudha Tai. She called and I was in Mumbai. She was very surprised because I'm based in Delhi. So she said that, insisted that since you are here, you must find time and come here. So I have squeezed this one in between the two programs. Morning I had one function, and in the afternoon from 2 o'clock onwards, Government of Maharashtra has organized an international seminar on international conference on Dr. Ambedkar, which is going to go on for 2 days. That starts at 2 o'clock and it will continue tomorrow. And in the afternoon, late afternoon, I'm going to give a speech there. There is only one special lecture that is going to be mine. And then at 8:30 today, 8:30 or 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock today on NDTV, I'm there in the debate on the appropriating legacy of Dr. Ambedkar. That is the debate. So there is a BJP representative, there is a Congress representative, and I don't belong to any party. So I will be speaking, and I have a lot to say on the subject because I have been studying Dr. Ambedkar and several books. I have written 20 books on Dr. Ambedkar in Marathi, Hindi and English together. 3 of them were a collection of his speeches that I edited. 2 of them were about the summaries of all his completed writings. And then I wrote his first ever intellectual biography, Dr. Ambedkar. That is in English as well as in Marathi. In Marathi, the title is Pradnya Surya. And it's a very big book, 800 plus pages. And the English one is called Ambedkar, Awakening the Social Conscience of Modern India. Because I truly believe that it was Dr. Ambedkar who awakened the social conscience of modern India. And that is what the book is about. It is about his intellectual evolution. That is an unusual form of biography that I have handled. And please do take a look at it whenever you can. Today, I'm going to speak about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar as a national leader. And what I intend to do is to speak for about 30 minutes or 35 minutes, and then seek questions from you. And we will discuss the questions. I will take all your questions, and at one go, I will try to answer them. That is going to be the format. Whenever we think about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, what is the image that we have? The first thing that comes to everybody's mind, I'm talking about all Indians, I'm not talking about Dalits alone. First image that comes to mind is he was the leader of Dalits. Of course, it is true that he was a messiah for Dalits, but he was not confined to being the leader of Dalits alone. He was a lot more than that. Then the second image that comes to our mind is here, Dr. Ambedkar was the principal architect of the Indian Constitution. Yes, that is of course true. Although some people like Arun Chauri have raised some doubts about it, it's undoubtedly true that Dr. Ambedkar was the principal architect of the Indian Constitution. And while that is true, again, that does not capture the enormity of the contribution that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar made. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was truly a national leader, period. And Dr. Ambedkar made such contribution in such diverse field as nobody else did. No leader in India ever created so many books. He wrote 22 great books on different subjects: economics, sociology, political science, history, law, even anthropology. There are two great books on anthropology that he has written. So on a variety of subjects, he wrote 22 books, and at the time of his death, his Mahaparinirvan, on 6th of December 1956, Dr. Ambedkar left behind 10 books which were left at various stages of completion. 10 books. And each one of them is a masterpiece, and that has remained incomplete. So he made all this contribution. So there are different facets of his personality, and he was truly a national leader. He was not only a nation builder, he laid the foundation of the Indian Republic. It's very, very important that he has laid the foundation of India's Republic. Since I'm talking here in the SNDT Women's University, let me ask you a question. We all know if a question is asked by the teachers here and to students, that name 5 people who fought for the equality of men and women, how many percentage of students will respond Ambedkar as one of them? I assure you, none. Anna Sahib Karve and all those are correct names. Mahatma Phule, of course, is the correct name. But nobody takes Ambedkar's name. Do you realize that Ambedkar is the only person in Indian history who relinquished his cabinet minister's job because he could not get through the Hindu Code Bill, which was a revolutionary bill in favor of man-woman equality. Ambedkar was the one who fought for it for 3.5 years. And what was he fighting about? That women must get share in the ancestral property. He was fighting for women to get share in, in their husband's property. He was talking about allowing the intercaste marriage and so on. And curiously, this is very, very interesting. Curiously, the orthodoxy, everything that Ambedkar was saying has happened afterwards. But at the time when he was saying it, people were just not ready for that. And the orthodoxy of the Congress party, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had said in the beginning that I don't care whether my government stays or it comes down, but this is a revolutionary bill and I'm going to get this through. This was the beginning. But later on, what happened was the orthodoxy of the Congress party, led by the then President Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and the orthodoxy, the Sanatanis of the opposition party, they ganged up together and they made sure that this was defeated. Can you imagine that? This has happened in our country, and at one stage, Panditji called Baba Saheb Ambedkar and told him that we can't get everything about this bill through, so Baba Saheb will have to make a compromise. What we will do is that 50% will get through about the marriage and divorce, etc. will get through, and the remaining 50% we will leave it to the first parliament, which when it comes into being. Ambedkar quoted Sanskrit vachan that Sarvanashe samutpanne ardhyam tyajati panditaha. So when everything is being lost, a wise person prefers to keep 50% of it. So he said, all right, and he accepted that. 3 weeks after that, Panditji called Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar and said, I'm sorry, I can't get this through. On the spot, Dr. Ambedkar resigned from the cabinet post and stormed out of the cabinet. And I have not seen any women's organization talking about Dr. Ambedkar as a champion of equality of men and women. So what I am trying to say is that there are so many facets of Dr. Ambedkar's personality that we do not know. And by branding him as the leader of scheduled caste or scheduled tribes, or as the principal architect of the Indian Constitution, we are depriving ourselves about the national contribution that Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar has made. I'm first Indian, and I'm Indian in the end, and nothing in between. This is a statement not made by Mahatma Gandhi or anybody. This is a statement made by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. So he was the one who always had complete nation in front of him. He was of course championing the cause of the underprivileged, but he was never confined to them alone. Dr. Ambedkar made magnificent contribution in so many different ways, and he awakened the social conscience of modern India. So what I want to do is to give you a quick rundown of different facets of Dr. Ambedkar's personality. First facet, which is the most ignored one, is that Dr. Ambedkar was a top-class economist. The most highly educated economist and trained economist in our country was not Professor Amartya Sen, it was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. In 1915, Ambedkar went to Columbia University in USA and did his master's in economics. Then in the same university, 1917, he completed his PhD degree in economics. And then he went to United Kingdom, and there in the London School of Economics, he did Doctor of Science. Doctor of Science, which was also in economics. And then while doing the Doctor of Science, working on Doctor of Science, he also studied law and became a barrister. So in addition to the barrister's degree, all other degrees of Dr. Ambedkar, they belong to economics. But economics is, nobody associates him with economics. So let me give you, to begin with, what is his contribution as an economist. There are two very important books that he wrote in his student days. One was his PhD dissertation. What was the title of the PhD dissertation? It was Evolution of Provincial Finances in British India. Basically what he did there was British central government and British provinces, what we call states. In those days they used to call provinces. So between the period, I think between 1800 to 1910, he reviewed, critically analyzed the relationship between the British central government and the provinces at that time, and talked about the financial relationship between center and provinces, or center and states. And then he talked about how that relation should be. So he analyzed what was and then talked about how it should be. Then later, when he wrote the Constitution of India, he added a provision there, Finance Commission. Every 5 years, Finance Commission is appointed in our country. What is the job of Finance Commission? The divisible pool of resources that the central government gets in terms of tax and non-tax revenue. How do you share that? How much should the central government keep and how much should be given to the states? And what should be the principles under which it should be distributed to the states? These are the recommendations which are made by the Finance Commission. So far, in our country, after independence, 14 Finance Commissions have been appointed. You will be surprised that the basic source of standard reference for all the 14 Finance Commissions is the Babasaheb Ambedkar's PhD dissertation, which was published in the year 1925. We know about Finance Commission, but we do not know that. We talk about, Modi ji has been talking about fiscal federalism. He has been talking about cooperative federalism. So center-state relationship is a live topic even today. And the first person who did the basic work on this was Dr. Ambedkar. We don't know about that. Then the second book that he wrote on economics is even more important. The title of that, this was his thesis for a dissertation for Doctor of Science degree. He said that this was the book about how the Indian rupee has evolved over a period of time. You know, he always gives that, it was that time style maybe, a historical perspective. So for more than 100-year period, from 1800 to 1920 or 1915, he reviews how the Indian rupee has evolved as a medium of exchange. And then toward the end of the book, he talks about a very important problem then. What is the ideal currency system for a developing country like India? This was the issue, which was hotly debated everywhere. That time, there were two alternatives that the experts were talking about. To make it very, very simple, I would say that the two alternatives, one was gold standard, the other was gold exchange standard. Gold standard meant that gold itself was used as a medium of exchange, whereas gold exchange standard, paper currency was used as a medium of exchange, and that was backed by gold. So this was the debate that was going on. In this debate, anybody who has studied economics would know one name, John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes was the biggest economist of the time. Still, we teach his economics even today. So John Maynard Keynes, he studied India and took a position that for a developing country like India, what is the most appropriate currency system would be gold exchange standard. And the reasons he gave were these, that he said that gold exchange standard is flexible. It does not tie down the government to a rigid kind of form, which would not allow flexibility in terms of expanding the money supply beyond the limit. So it ties it down to the availability of gold in the country. So it is a very rigid standard. What we need for a developing country is a flexible standard, and that flexibility, he said, was offered by the gold exchange standard. So when John Maynard Keynes, Lord Keynes, as my teachers would tell me, never say John Maynard Keynes, Lord Keynes, they are more loyal than the king. So when he took that position, everybody, every small and big economist in our country followed that and championed the cause of the gold exchange standard, not Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar was a young, dynamic student who had just returned with the biggest degrees with him. So he had returned to India in 1923 with all those degrees, and he, in his problem of rupee, handled this issue, and later in terms of some articles and research papers, his argument was that for a country like India, as Keynes is saying that gold exchange standard is more suitable, I don't agree with that. He said it is true that gold exchange standard will have flexibility and that flexibility would be desirable. But he basically insisted, I'm making things very simple. It's a lot more complicated, but I want everybody to understand. What Ambedkar was saying is that flexibility is a double-edged weapon. It is good because it does not necessarily tie down the government to a rigid form. But at the same time, it was Ambedkar who argued that if the government is irresponsible, then what will happen is that there would be undue, uninterrupted expansion of liquidity, because currency notes can be created ad nauseam, they can be created, and it can lead to an unrelented expansion of currency. If the government is irresponsible, that would create too much liquidity in the country, and that too much liquidity will create inflation, and inflation is the most iniquitous form of taxation which will hurt the poor the most. And therefore, he said he recommended a modified form of foreign exchange, a modified form of gold standard. In 1926, something very interesting happened. Dr. Ambedkar had come back to India. There was a very important commission was sent to India. This was called Hilton Young Commission. What was the mandate of the commission? The mandate of the commission was to make a recommendation to establish the central bank of our country, Reserve Bank of India, which came into being 8 years later on 1st April 1935. But when this commission came, commission met all kinds of experts in here, and it was Dr. Ambedkar, young, dynamic scholar, who made a presentation before the Hilton Young Commission, and it turned out that the testimony that he had given and the statement that he had issued before submitted to the Hilton Young Commission, we took 70 years to recognize what Ambedkar was saying. Again, to make things very simple, Ambedkar was arguing, again the language was different at that time. अर्थशास्त्राची परिभाषा पण बदलत जात असते. So, but basically the argument that he was making was this, that whenever you create central bank, like Reserve Bank of India, you please make sure that the amount of credit that the central bank will give to the government of India should be restrained. There should be some kind of limit on that. It should not be unbridled, uncontrolled. Because if it is uncontrolled, too much money will be created and that would lead to inflation. Nobody listened to him. The testimony is available. Anybody can verify that. Nobody listened to him. 65 years thereafter, in 1993, when I was very much there in RBI and I was the secretary of the Central Board of Directors, and I used to write the speeches of all the governors at that time. That time there was an agreement made between the Reserve Bank of India governor, C. Rangarajan was the governor, and Montek Singh Ahluwalia was the finance secretary. There is a formal agreement made that we have to move in the direction of putting a cap on the extent of credit that the Reserve Bank will be extending to the government of India to cover their fiscal deficit. This was the argument that was made by Ambedkar in 1926-27. We took more than 65 years to understand that, and even when we did take corrective action, nobody gave credit to Dr. Ambedkar for that. But now, luckily, for the last few months, I'm the chairman of the History Writing Committee of Advisory Committee of the Reserve Bank of India. But the period given to me is not the old one. Period given to me, there is a tradition of this is the 5th volume from 1996 to 2007. For that period, the history I am in charge. Earlier, only the former governors used to be in charge of that, and they made an exception, and now they have made me chairman of that. And we have already started working on that history. But this history has to be known. That's the point that I'm trying to make. This is his contribution as an economist. Now, he was not only a bookish kind of economist. Dr. Ambedkar was a great economic administrator as well. Now I'm going to tell you something which is going to confuse you or will enlighten you beyond your imagination. Do you know that in 1942, Ambedkar, at the time when Mahatma Gandhi gave a call about quit India, that was 9th July 1942. On 20th July, Dr. Ambedkar was appointed as a minister by the British. What they did was, they decided to let number of Indians participate in the cabinet. They did not call it Cabinet of Ministers, they call it Viceroy's Executive Council. So Dr. Ambedkar was appointed there, among others. So 6 Indians were appointed, Ambedkar was one of them. What was the charge given to him? It's very interesting. He was given ministries which have now become 15 ministries. 1, labor and employment. 2nd, electricity. 3rd, public works department. 4th, water management. 5th, minerals management. They have now become 15 ministries. Now look at his contribution as the economic administrator in the British government. First, we all know about employment exchanges, right? Everybody has to deal with at some stage or other employment exchanges. Who established the employment exchanges in our country? The first decision was by Dr. Ambedkar. We talk about, Modi ji is talking about Skill India, right? Okay. Who introduced the first program of skill development in our country? It was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar as the labor minister. Even about women, let me say this. The entire set of labor welfare reforms, including the minimum wages, including the overtime, including linking the cost of living with the dearness allowance with the cost of living, and maternity leave for ladies workers. Not by anybody else, it was Dr. Ambedkar, and we simply do not know this. This is the problem that we have. Now, I'm not making an accusation about that these things have been kept outside, was there any motive, I don't care. But the fact is, this is the history that you do not know, and therefore you must know that. So this is his contribution as an economic administrator, as a labor and employment minister. By the way, this tripartite structure between the government, labor unions and the employers, which is even in existence today. This was again laid down by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Then other fields, he made some very important decision about the electricity generation. Then about PWD. Do you know that many of the big dams in our country actually came around the time when Dr. Ambedkar was the minister? Not Bhakra Nangal, that came later. But Hirakud Dam, and on the lines of Tennessee Valley, he did Damodar Valley project. That was entirely done by Dr. Ambedkar as the British Minister of India. Then even the water management. You know, last few years back, there was a big debate in India about connecting rivers. Remember, my friend Suresh Prabhu and many others took credit. Nothing had actually happened and not likely to happen. But the first effort of connecting rivers in Bihar and in Orissa was done by Dr. Ambedkar as a part of the water management. We don't know about it. Central Water Commission, which is working even today. Central Water Commission, which is working even today, was established by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And then the minerals management. Now coal, there is a separate ministry. For other minerals, there are separate ministries. The first policy on minerals management was designed by Dr. Ambedkar. So Ambedkar was economic administrator par excellence as well. And that is why he was very keen on becoming finance minister or chairman of the planning commission. But that was denied to him. And in his resignation letter in 1951, when he resigned, he has given a number of reasons. First was Hindu Code Bill, which we talked about. And then he mentions that I was never made in charge of any of the economic or finance ministries. And I was promised that I would be made in charge of the planning commission. And I was never made in charge of planning commission as well. So he says that. I think that if Dr. Ambedkar was made the finance minister of the country, or if he was made the chairman or deputy chairman of Planning Commission of India, I think the future of the state of Indian economy would have been very different than what it was or what it has become. But that is if and buts, and we do not want to go into that. Then there are many other facets. Only one more facet I would like to mention. In that book which was released today, I have identified 12 different facets and written about each one of them. I want to cover one more facet and stop and take your questions. And this is, you know, some people have doubts about Dr. Ambedkar's contribution about the Constitution. Even today, you will see in social media, how can one person write the whole Constitution? You know, there are people who raise questions and they create a rift in the thinking of minds of people. Please understand the reality, and I'll explain to you. You know, they decided to have a constituent assembly. The British government decided to have a constituent assembly, and that came into being in 1946, well before independence, because independence was one event. Preparations were going on for many years, frankly speaking, so it was very clear that British were going, and they were clearing the way. So when the Constituent Assembly was created, one important development before that. In 1940, Dr. Ambedkar wrote a very interesting book. What happened was in March 1940, Muslim League demanded, first time a demand was made that Pakistan should be a separate nation. This happened in March 1940. By December of 1940, Ambedkar wrote a massive book on that subject, Pakistan or Partition of India. He wrote a book within 9 months, and that book came out, and second edition of that book was brought out in 1945, and both Mahatma Gandhi and Barrister Jinnah, who were fighting about the partition, they both publicly recognized that the most important source of reference on this issue is Ambedkar's Pakistan or Partition of India, or earlier version was called Thoughts on Pakistan. So, you know, there is so much contribution that we simply do not know. But about Constitution, there is something there is something strongly negative happening, that a lot of people, Arun Shourie and many others, have raised objection. How can you give credit only to Dr. Ambedkar? The reality is this, that British government created the Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly was the collection of the most enlightened people of our country. Brilliant people, leaders, thought leaders, everybody. 292, if I remember right. They wanted, Congress party was very annoyed with Dr. Ambedkar, so they kept him out. They tried to keep him out, and they saw to it that he was not elected from Mumbai province. That time Mumbai was a big province. So he was not elected. So he played a trick. He was also a solid politician. So he went to Bengal, and in no. There was no Rajya Sabha at that time. No. Constituent Assembly, the parliament was Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly had two things to do. One was to act as a parliament, combined parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the other one was to create the constitution. Both were responsibilities. So they were chosen by indirect election from the elected representatives of the provincial assemblies. So Ambedkar went to Calcutta, and from Bengal, with the support of Muslim League, he came to power. He came to Constituent Assembly. So in Constituent Assembly, he was in a minority. Congress had done its best to prevent him from coming because he had many fights with Mahatma Gandhi, and you all know about it, I hope. So what happened was, when he came in there, one day, in the very opening meeting, suddenly, Rajendra Prasad asked him to come and speak. Now, he was representing a very small party, Scheduled Caste Federation, but he was a giant. And suddenly, Ambedkar was told to come and speak. So, Kaka Saheb Gadgil, who was a great Congress leader and who became one of my distinguished predecessors in Pune University as the Vice Chancellor, he left the governorship of Punjab, Kaka Saheb Gadgil, to become Vice Chancellor of Pune University, third Vice Chancellor of Pune University. So he was there. So he has actually written that we were all told to hoot out Dr. Ambedkar. So whatever he speaks, so we were all waiting to thump the benches and to hoot him out, because they thought that he has played a trick and he has come from somewhere else, and we don't want him. They never wanted him. But Ambedkar was a great strategist. He made such a brilliant speech on that day in the Constituent Assembly that Kaka Saheb Gadgil says, we had all gone to hoot him out, and before we realized, we all had gotten up and we had given him a standing ovation. So then there was some change of mind, and what they did was, and Mahatma Gandhi played a very important role here. This is really so beautiful, because Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar, they fought like street fighters. There is a big tradition of their fights. Mahatma Gandhi, only 3 times he went on fast until death. On two occasions it was against some institutions like British government. Only once, against one person, he went on hunger strike, and that person was Dr. Ambedkar, 1932. With all that, it was Mahatma Gandhi. So what has happened in society, I see it today. Dalits, they worship Ambedkar and they blame Mahatma Gandhi. Followers of Mahatma Gandhi blame Dr. Ambedkar. That blame game still continues. There is kind of polarization. But little do they realize that both of these great people, great men, have something in common. They both knew that the nation was bigger than each one of them. So when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was going to, see, at that time, the first remote control in our country was really Mahatma Gandhi. No decision could take place without his consent. So as the story goes, I do not have 100% confirmation, but looking at the memoirs and so on, Jawaharlal Nehru goes with a list to Panditji goes to Mahatma Gandhi with the list. First question that Mahatma Gandhi asked him, is Ambedkar there? So, Jawaharlal Nehru could not, he was gaping at him, could not, so he said no. So he said, Mahatma Ji said, in that case, I do not want to look at this list. And he gave that list back to him. Panditji goes out by pencil, he adds the name of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and that is how he entered. After he entered as the law minister, then at some point, decision had to be made that who will write the constitution, who will draft the constitution. Babasaheb Ambedkar was on several committees, subcommittees, etc. But when that drafting committee was to be formed, Jawaharlal Nehru had already decided to bring an Englishman. Austin something was his name. So he had made up his mind, the great jurist, to be brought in to write the constitution. Mahatma Gandhi, when he came to know about it, he asked Panditji, हमारे इतने बड़े देश में आपको और कोई नहीं मिल रहा है जो इसको लिख सकेगा? अंबेडकर जी के बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है? And you can imagine what happened then. Finally, of course, Gandhiji had the last word. But see how beautiful this is, that people who were fighting with each other throughout their life, professional life, when it came to founding the nation, you know, they knew that more than any individual, you know, the nation is far more important. And that is why, you know, it makes Mahatma Gandhi look even bigger in my eyes, that they opted the right person. And what is the role that Ambedkar played in Constitution? Two things. First of all, he was given a committee of 7 people to draft the Constitution. Out of these 7 people, 2 were perpetually ill. One of them was always traveling abroad. And one of them actually died also. And one of them died. So what happened was, willy-nilly, the entire burden of drafting the Constitution fell on the feeble shoulders of Dr. Ambedkar. Ambedkar was not well. Still, he worked 18 hours every day to write that Constitution. That is one great contribution that he made. But after writing the Constitution, the bigger challenge was later. That was the challenge of piloting the Constitution to 292, the most learned people in our country. So what he did was, very interesting. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, now his job was to pilot the Constitution. The total number of corrections suggested were 7,642. Out of which 3,472, give and take few hundreds here and there, I am just recalling, but close to 4,000 corrections were actually debated in the Constituent Assembly, each one of them. For each one of the correction, Dr. Ambedkar would give the positive side and negative side and conduct discussion of these most brilliant 292 people. Do you know that not a single provision in Indian Constitution has been decided by majority? No. Each one of them is decided by unanimity, unanimously. And who built the consensus of all these people? Remember, these people were all great people. They were not Lallu Panjus. You know, they were the founding fathers of our country. And to pilot this, just to give you a contrast, you know, in cooperative societies where most of us live, you know, in the cooperative society, have you seen the annual general body meeting of a cooperative society? On a simple issue like raising the salary of liftman, they debate for 3 hours and 4 hours. Here, we are talking about the entire future of a nation. And 292 most brilliant people in the country are together. And it was Dr. Ambedkar who piloted each provision and arrived at a consensus. Just see the enormity of the contribution. And that is why Dr. Rajendra Prasad said on the concluding day that, you know, last 3.5 years I have been sitting in this chair and watching Dr. Ambedkar perform. Nobody else could have performed the way he did in spite of his failing health. And he said that this is the greatest contribution that an individual can do. So with that on record, it's very, very clear that those like Arun Shourie who are raising doubts about it, you know, their agenda is different from the national agenda, and we don't even want to talk about that. The point is this, and Dr. Ambedkar, when he resigned, I don't think we have time for questions, but there is one more aspect that I want to talk about, which is very close to everybody's heart. Do you know that? There was an effort around that time to reorganize the Indian states on the linguistic basis. And in 1956, there was a big problem in Maharashtra because the Bombay province, united Bombay province was a big one, which included Gujarat and today's Maharashtra and part of Karnataka and so on. So there was a talk about creation of Maharashtra. So what happened was, interestingly, all the Gujarati, they happened to be Gujarati. Gujarati intellectuals all got together, led by Professor C.N. Vakil, who was the director of the Bombay School of Economics in Mumbai University. C.N. Vakil, Brahmananda's guru. C.N. Vakil and Professor Dantwala, Professor Ghiwala, these were all great people. They all came together and they started writing about why Mumbai should not be part of Maharashtra. And one person, the only person, show me any other person, he took all the objections, Babasaheb Ambedkar took all their objections, and each objection he has given a very fitting, logical, consistent reply as to why Mumbai must remain part of Maharashtra. It's not Shiv Sena leader or his father or anybody. It was Dr. Ambedkar who did that. And in the book that was released today morning, there are two very interesting chapters to begin with. This is a book brought out by Bombay Municipal Corporation, Greater Bombay Municipal Corporation. So the first two chapters, first chapter is Ambedkar, Mumbaikar Ambedkar. He loved the city of Mumbai, and large part of 32 years of his life he spent in Mumbai. So his love and affection about Mumbai, that I have put out in that first chapter. Second chapter is his argument and his counter argument about why Mumbai must remain in Maharashtra. Since this is a BMC volume, these two are the prominent ones and which you will find very educative. But 1955, Dr. Ambedkar died in 1956. In 1955, there was Fazal Ali Commission report that came out. This report was about linguistic reorganization of Indian states. When that report came out, it was hailed as a very good report and all that, and they started preparing for the reorganization. What was the basic principle that Fazal Ali has used? Surprisingly, it looks so good. But you require Dr. Ambedkar to show the holes in that. The principle that Fazal Ali Commission used was one language, one state. One language, one state, which looks perfectly legitimate, right? One language, one state, cultural integration and all that. It fits in very well. Everybody said yes to that, not Ambedkar. Ambedkar said this is completely wrong. It should not be one language, one state. It should be one state, one language. Now see the difference. One language, one state, and one state, one language. These are not the same thing. Ambedkar's argument was, if you make it one language, one state formula, then in the North India, because of the Hindi domination, there would be fewer provinces with large size, like Uttar Pradesh. And in South India, there would be many states which would be smaller in size. And this, he said, will pave the way for a possible conflict between North India and South India. And therefore, he said that there should be number of small states based on economic and cultural considerations, where one state will have one language, but one language will not have one state. So this is how he combined, and he said that the capital should not be only in Delhi alone. Many of the Andhrites or Telangana people will be very happy that he said the second capital must be Hyderabad. And he drew pictures to show how Bihar should be divided into two, how central province should be divided into two, and both of that has happened. Bihar was divided into Bihar and Jharkhand. Central province was divided into Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. And then he also recommended making 3 states out of Uttar Pradesh, which Mayawati tried, but with no success. The point is that there has to be reorganization in such a manner that there is a proper balance between North and South, and that it doesn't create any problem. This was the vision that Dr. Ambedkar had. And the last point that I would like to make and stop is about his conversion. In the first, Dr. Ambedkar returned to India in 1923. First 10 years, from 1924 to 1934, he tried to change the Hindu religion from within. He was a reformer, religious reformer. Look at the battles that he fought. First one was Mahad Chaudhar Tale Satyagraha, where right to water, access to water was the issue. And then 1930 and 31, up to 1936, there was the temple entry movement in Kalaram Mandir temple in Nashik, and so on. But then he realized that the change is not going to take place, the change is going to be very slow, and he was not happy about this at all. So in 1935, he announced that I was born untouchable Hindu. That was not in my hand, but I'm not going to die as a Hindu. This was the announcement that he made in 1935, and which was the first announcement of conversion, that I'm going to quit Hinduism. But he did not jump into any other religion. He waited for 21 years, and toward the end of his life, he converted himself, and he led the conversion of about 600,000 to 700,000 people into Buddhism on 14th October 1956. That is barely 50 days before his sad demise. Please do understand, just think about it, two things about his decision. One is that, and this is what is causing lot of content among a lot of people. Tonight I'm going to debate about the political legacy of Dr. Ambedkar. Why is everybody trying to? You just think about it. If Dr. Ambedkar chose a religion which came from the Indian soil, just imagine if Dr. Ambedkar had taken some religion which has originated abroad. I will be frank. Suppose that he had taken Islam or Christianity, Islam in particular. Can you imagine what would have happened to the polarization in our country? It would have influenced our entire nation, and our history, course of our history possibly could be different. If he had taken Sikhism, what would have happened to Khalistan issue? You can imagine. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar never jumped into anything. He was very thoughtful, and he chose a religion which comes from the Indian soil, A, and B, as he maintained, you know, the basic principles that were dear to his mind, to him, which were enshrined in the Constitution, were four: liberty, equality, fraternity, and social justice. Swatantrya, Samata, Bandhutva, and Samajik Nyaya. These were the four basic precepts that guided the Indian Constitution and shaping the future of our country. And Dr. Ambedkar has actually gone on record that liberty, equality, and fraternity, these are the principles which I have not taken from the French Revolution, thank you. I have taken these principles from the Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, and he has gone on record there. The point is that, you know, such are the people who happen once in a while. Yuga Nirmata is the ideal kind of title for a person like Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. You know, there are so many more facets that I did not talk about. I barely touched upon many, but then there are many, many more. If you feel inspired to look into the other facets of Dr. Ambedkar's personality, then, you know, my coming here all the way from Delhi to come to speak to you on the request of my friend Vasudha Tai, I would feel really very good that you have been inspired to do so. And that, I believe, would be the correct tribute that one can pay, the honor that we can pay to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, one of the greatest sons of our country, Bharat Mata. Thank you very much.